Thank you, Ted, for having me here, and I love music and I love coffee, so I was thrilled with the first two speakers. So I run the Mural Arts program. It is one of the largest programs of its kind in the world. It is a citywide community public art program. We have over 3,500 murals in the city. We have served over 30,000 young people since 1984. We work in shelters, we work in prisons, and basically what we do is we mine the social power of art and we put it to work in communities, neighborhoods, and with young people. Every day we do this work. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a whirlwind tour. Philadelphia in the mid-'80s. There was a new mayor, Wilson Goode, our first African-American mayor. And there was a new sense of optimism in the air. And there was also a graffiti crisis. There was graffiti everywhere. My history is that I had gone to Stanford University. I moved down to Los Angeles. I started doing murals in LA, working with kids on probation. I loved it. I was an artist who always thought about law school. I gave it up. I came back east because I grew up in Margate, New Jersey. I eventually was hired by the Goode administration to run a little art program for this anti-graffiti network. Now, there's a lot of talk these days about the role of government and government money and what government should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And I want to tell you something, government can be effective, and Philadelphia had a social epidemic. When I say there was graffiti everywhere, there was graffiti everywhere. Neighborhoods and communities were totally blighted. This is what it looked like, but multiply this times 1,000. So Wilson Goode had this idea. He said, we're going to reduce graffiti in the city, but we're not going to do it just by traditional means. Because any city could just white out walls. You could do that, it's easy. But he was going to work with the kids who were writing on walls. And he hired me to try to rechannel the negative energy to something positive. And that was a daunting task. But what he did is he put real money on the table, and he funded this organization, the Anti-Graffiti Network. And he said, what we're going to do is we're going to give young people opportunities to give back and make a difference and clean up Philadelphia. And to me, it was a visionary concept. And I've studied programs all over the world. And why do I use the term visionary? I use it because the seat of power was open to kids from every neighborhood of the city. And he was committed to making a difference in neighborhoods and communities that had totally been neglected by city government. So this was a very unusual time in the city. So for me, it was exciting, and you could feel the excitement in the air. It was palpable. So the way he structured it is that and I want to say this, that elected officials, they can have lots of ideas, but until they fund it, it's not going to make a difference. And he funded this program with about $6 million. And if you look at how programs operate, not just in Philly, but across the country, that's highly unusual. So he was really committed to grassroots community change, and I applaud him for that. So he hired 10 community organizers, and then they hired me. And they said, okay, so Jane Golden, and they gave me, the first meeting, my boss gave me a box, a cardboard box, and in that box were magic markers, and it was paper. He walked me down the hall to what was my art room, and it was a closet. In my office was pandemonium. Think of police dramas that you watch on television. Law and Order, that's a good example. So there were police officers running in and out, and there were graffiti writers everywhere. How did you know they were graffiti writers? Because they had backpacks. They made clicking sounds, and you say, oh, what's in the backpack? They would say books. You go, really? And then they go out in the hallway, you hear, you go, oh my God, are they like writing on the walls of City Hall? They were. And the police would chase it, and this would go on. So I thought, and I thought, well, I probably should have gone to law school. What am I doing? I'm like, it's a mess. But I grew up like reading crime novels, so I sort of like the fact that I was sort of living on the edge. The city gave me an old undercover police car. When you beat them or the trunk flew open, it was very mysterious. And I thought, what I need to do is I need to infiltrate the graffiti world, because they were highly organized. They meet in North Philly on Saturdays, and they would plan where they were going to write. And in fact, they were so organized, it was like they had a consultant or something. It was like this strange. There were graffiti gangs, high-class lunatics, out to bomb. Can't believe I remember this. The Bronx Bombers. There were leaders, there were followers. So I thought to myself, I've got to start following the graffiti writers to figure out why they write, to design a program that will be palatable to them, so I can inspire them to not write on walls, but instead think about art. That was my plan of action. So now, in anti-graffiti, there was something called the amnesty pledge. So once we found the graffiti writers, you see how happy everybody looks here? You'd have to swear they would never write on walls for the rest of their life, which of course wasn't true. But it was a beginning, And once they came in, they would do scrub time, they'd clean walls, and then they were sent to me. And one of the first things Tim Spencer said to me is, you're going to have about 1,000 graffiti writers. Good luck. I was like, thank you, Tim Spencer. So actually, there we are doing scrub time. So anyway, I had a break. In the first month that I worked in anti-graffiti, it was overwhelming and daunting. And I did realize that I wasn't really sure that I could ever connect with graffiti writers. But I was given an assistant, and my assistant was named Tran. Tran was one of the most notorious graffiti writers in the city. So Tran, you know, he had a part-time job. He told me I could check his references. He did light maintenance in the tunnels for our public transit agency, SEPTA. Much later, after Tran and I bonded, he took me to look at some of the tunnels where he worked, and there were the most extraordinary graffiti murals you've ever seen. So I think the fact that he was hired to do light maintenance was slightly ironic. That said, Tran was energetic and talented and enthusiastic, and we started working together. One night, it was a Friday night, there's a knock on my door. I open the door, and there are 10, and they all look very tall to me, guys at my front door. And they introduced themselves to me as Baby Rock, Cool Earl, Disco Duck, and Arnold. And I realized these guys are on the most wanted posters. I know it's corny, we had most wanted posters in our office. So I'm like, oh, right? So I always err on the side of being solicitous, which has served me well in city government. I was rated through 4 mural administrations. So I invited them in. I can't believe what I said. I said, come in, we'll chat and have some tea. Like, anyway, I said it, they came in, they look over at my bookshelf and they go, oh, look at those art books. And I'm like, help yourself. So they start looking through the art books. And this one guy stands up and he goes, hey, my name is Knife. So at that point I could feel my spine stiffen. So I said, hello, Knife. I didn't know whether it was Mr. Knife, right? It was like, all these graffiti writers in my living room. I'm not sure what to do. So he said, well, I want to ask you a few questions. I'm like, go ahead. So he goes, well, I want to know what you think about the color fields in Mark Rothko's paintings. I love William de Kooning's work. Hans Hofmann's great. My all-time favorite is Andy Warhol. He goes, in fact, I just stole this book from the library. And he pulls out a book on Andy Warhol. I'm like, drop it, because I'm thinking fingerprints, right? Because me and my crime dramas. I'm like, uh-oh. So then he pulls out the magazine, Art in America. Because I said to him, well, how do you know about the abstract expressionists? They all told me they had dropped out of school in 10th grade, which I knew. So I said, how do you know about these artists? He goes, well, he pulls out the magazine Art in America. He goes, I've been stealing this since I was 10. So I'm like, well, that's not great news. We call that theft. I said, but it's not terrible news because you're clearly interested. They were all holding these black books like this. I said, okay, everybody open up the books. And there was some conversation whether I was was I with the police or was I really an artist? I said, I can assure you I was an art major at Stanford. So I'm not a police officer. You can open the books. In their books, I didn't know what I was going to see. There were these amazing drawings. They had an intuitive sense of design and color and anatomy as if they'd gone to college. So it was a moment of epiphany for me because here was this raw talent. They didn't have opportunities and options. My life has been privileged, right? I had great parents. I went to college. I went to grad school when I was little. I had art lessons. So here we are, a city agency, and the question is, what are we going to do about this? And my answer then is the answer I have today. We are going to absolutely, with great intention, offer them every opportunity we can. And hopefully they will see art as a lifeline. I said, here's the deal, you guys. You have an opportunity artists all over this country would love. You can get paid to paint, but you can't use spray paint because the mayor says so. They said, oh, well, we're not going to sign up. I said, well, you know what I think? What do you want to do? Where are you going? You've all dropped out of high school. We're going to be famous graffiti artists. I said, really? Only a handful of artists will make it in America every year who can rely on their art alone. Where are you going? They said, we don't know. I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to sign up for anti-graffiti. You're going to work with me. We're going to paint murals throughout Philly. I went upstairs. I brought them down books. I showed them pictures of murals in LA. I said, this is what we're doing in Philadelphia. Are you with me? They said, yes. I was like, oh my God. So they all were very agreeable and quite polite, I have to say. And they left. I'm thinking victory. So the next day, I'm on my way to work. And I'm a wall hunter. I notice great walls. I can't help myself. Even with a waiting list of 2,000 people, I still look at blank walls. So I'm just about to turn down Broad Street, if you know Philly, straight to City Hall. And I see on this great wall, new tags. Cool Earl, Disco Duck, Tran, Knife. One edition, Cool Jane. It was giant. I'm like, it was a nightmare. I turned down Broad Street. There are 30 Cool Jane tags. I'm like, yikes, big yikes, right? I'm going to lose my job. But, so I go to work, and there's Tran, the assistant. I'm like, Tran, he goes, listen, you're the first adult who ever talked to them. They thought you were great. I'm like, why didn't they just say thank you? It's so easy. They wrote all along. My former boss comes in, she would wake up at 6 in the morning, write down the graffiti tags. He pulls out a piece of paper and he looks at us and goes, who's Jane? I look at Tran. Tran looks at Tim. It says, some girl from North Philly. I'm like, oh, bad. I said, get them on the phone. We're going to clean South Broad Street today. They don't show up. They can't come to my class in the art museum. Well, I thought that was a weak threat anyway. I said, there's no work, no money for them. So that got his attention. 3 o'clock that day, they met me. We cleaned up South Broad Street. I said, that's it, you guys. You're coming to my class, 9:30, art museum. Be there or no deal. You cannot work. So they showed up at the art museum. We had a great class. During one of the breaks, the guards come running in. 3 men, agitated. They said, Miss, you've got to control those kids. This is a disaster. I'm like, oh my God. They said, use the word disaster 3 times. I think, okay, A, allegedly they could be stealing art from the Philadelphia Museum. Not good. B, writing on the walls of the Philadelphia Museum. Not good either. I said, what are they doing? They said, they're in the cafeteria trying to sell their artwork to people from the suburbs. I'm like, yes! That's great. I was so relieved. Anyway, I said to these guys, okay, you're the mural crew now. We're going to paint murals. So how do you paint murals in Philly? This brings me to this image. What we did is we drove around, saw neighborhoods completely covered with graffiti. We asked people, do you want art? You know what people said? No. We want jobs, we want housing. Not unlike today. Art doesn't mean anything. We said, let's take a chance. What do you want? People said, you're asking us what we want? We said, yes. We believe public art is about creating a creative collaboration and partnership between artists and the community. What do you want? They said, well, you know what? The only visual stimulation we have here, Jane Golden, are billboards advertising alcohol and tobacco. Our kids will never have beauty. And I said, you know what, Miss Bagman, Miss Bullock, Miss Clark, the community leaders, that can change right now. And that is the beauty of murals, is that they level the playing field about where art is. It's why I've always loved them. Art should be accessible to everyone. Every citizen, everywhere has a right to have art in their life. It is not a luxury. So we said, what do you want? And these women said, we went to Africa. We went to Mount Kilimanjaro, and we want this on the wall. Or people said, we want Malcolm X. We want Dr. King. And you know what? We flew into action, and we did it. And when you go out and you actually make change, people begin to believe that people care and that things can change and that government can be effective. Here, when we did this mural, that vacant lot was filled with crack vials and syringes and trash up here. We said, oh no, let's clean this lot. And people said, that's right, let's clean this lot. Because we don't have to have blight. We don't have to live this way without services. So we were so inspired, we designed a resource guide to demystify city government. Why shouldn't people in poor neighborhoods get services? They absolutely should. And we, the collective we, can be part of that solution. And it was so incredibly inspiring. We saw murals become a catalyst for positive social change. The neighborhoods began to see themselves in terms of their potential and not as a liability.